all my videos up until now have been quite humorous in nature, but today I wanted to just take a time to talk about a more serious issue, one that is very personal, but at the same time I feel it's very important to share because it tells a lot about me and what I'm about. I wanted to include it in my last video, but I just couldn't find a place to fit it in because of the nature of it being so personal and so serious. And that issue is my spiritual beliefs. First off, I will just say my whole spiritual beliefs kind of started and evolved from one point in my life, and that point happened a few years ago. I was going through very tough times in my life. Had a lot of anxiety on my mind, a lot of stress from past events. I wasn't really at peace with myself or the outside world. I wasn't a hippie, really. But and then a loved one very dear to me passed away to make matters much worse, and but a good thing came out of that, and I had a dream about her, and in this dream she came to me wearing a purple dress, and I didn't think much about the dress at the time. I was thinking more about the words that she said. She said that everything was going to be okay, and I took that very seriously because the dream itself was very strange. It was very surreal because it was unlike any other dream that I have ever had before. It was as if my spirit has been uplifted to this other spiritual plane of existence, and that's where I was. It was almost too real to be a dream. So I was more focused on that when I actually recalled the dream the next day. But then I was more focused on the purple dress the night when I saw my loved one at her open casket viewing. Because that was the night I became a born again Christian, because I had walked up to her casket to say my final farewells, and she was wearing the exact same purple dress that she was in her dream. And that's when I just broke down and realized, wow, that wasn't a dream. I actually had gone somewhere, or at least I feel I have. There's something very ethereal about the whole thing. So yeah, I am a born again Christian. In my last video I said I don't believe in labels, and when I say Christian, that is a label, but it's one that I do use because it's a formal label. In the most basic sense of the word, it's you are a follower and a believer in Christ, and that's as simple as that. You follow His footsteps, and you believe in His words, and that's all I am in the sense of being a Christian. But the whole hippie image, that kind of comes from through the years. I've really grown inept to the outside world, beyond civilization, nature, if you will, and I'm very in touch and very in tune with nature, or at least I attempt to be. I listen to a lot of metal, and there's a subgenre of metal that I've recently discovered a few years ago when I was going through these tough times, called folk metal. And I actually just had gotten back from a concert the night before to see Korpiklani, which is a folk metal band from Finland. And a lot of these folk metal bands, Korpiklani no exception, incorporate a lot of their pagan beliefs into their music, and paganism is very fascinating to me. I guess I am somewhat of a pagan in the sense that I have adopted all of this nature imagery in my spirituality, because I will be the first to admit I don't go to church, and I don't necessarily read the Bible. The parts in the Bible I do read, though, are the ones that are printed in red, which are the words of Christ, because I know that that is not open for interpretation. That is the purest sense of the word. And I love nature. Like I said, I don't go to church. My church rests in the foothills of the mountains and the forests. I feel I can be most in touch with God there because there is no noise. There's just the natural noise of the birds and the streams and the wind, the air. Um, I'm I'm very in touch with the elements, and I believe in the elements and spirits, the supernatural, because that's the natural. Supernatural is the natural in some ways. Uh, so yeah, um, those are my spiritual beliefs. But like I said, with nature, I feel most in tune with God there because there's no noise of civilization. There's nothing to sidetrack you. And I guess kind of expanding on my whole spiritual beliefs, I mentioned the book A New Earth in my last video, which is a great book. But it all started with reading a book that was published previously to that by the same author, and that book was called Power of Now. I will include a link to both books in an annotation below, and also in my description box. Um, with the Power of Now, basically, it, it talks about this whole theme of living in the moment, taking it step by step, not living in the present through the eyes of the past or the eyes of the future, because that's when we lose sight of what's really there. And it sounds innovative, but really it's a very simple idea. So simple that so many of us take it for granted, and I guess Americans more so because we're a culture that's just obsessed and fascinated by violence and sex and drugs and all that horrible stuff that just makes us lose sight of what really matters and what is really there. But yeah, and also in that book, and also in New Earth, it doesn't really matter which one you start with. Personally, I'd suggest starting with The Power of Now, just because it's more of an introductory piece. But in both books, there's also this recurring theme of good versus evil, and reading that has made me. I will be the first also to say, on a side note, I am not a reader whatsoever, and when I first came across The Power of Now, I expected, it's going to take forever to read this book, but just reading the first paragraph, I was just so focused and so involved in what the author was talking about. I thought, wow, I'm going to read this book in like 2 nights, and well, I wanted to read it in 1 night, but I ended up reading it in 2 nights, and that is not natural for a boy like me who has maybe read 30 books in his entire life, in leisure time, mind you. But yeah, there's also this reoccurring theme in both books about this notion of good versus evil, and I've become a firm believer in however you deal with negativity precisely determines which force, good or evil, predominates your life. And I try to, be on the side of good. And he also talks about how negativity or evil can be masked sometimes. It can be in a disguise of something that looks good. Temptation is a great example, Ooh, should I eat that bear claw or should I eat that rice and chicken? Choices, decisions, it's all there. Very interesting books. I highly recommend them to anyone. It's not a whole bunch of, I don't know, Jesus talk or Buddhism talk. It talks about all religions, and for me too, I will just want to throw this out there. I am tolerant of all religions so long as they are positive ones, and what I mean by that is that they have positive meanings and positive goals, and are not out to hurt anyone, not out on the side of evil. I'm tolerant of everything. But I will say that I am spiritual, not religious. So with that said, those are my spiritual beliefs. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Peace and love, everyone.